Imagine this. It's a cold October evening, in the mid-2000s. A child is sitting in front of the TV, because the remote is easier to come by than friends. The kid is watching his favorite TV channel, Cartoon Network. After yet another rerun of Ed, Edd and Eddy, something different began to air. That kid was me. And that something different was the Scary Godmother Halloween Spooktacular, a 2003 animated Halloween special that aired on Cartoon Network every year until 2012. Kid me made sure to catch it every year, but Kid me was also blind to concepts such as funny jokes and good animation. So I decided it's time to rewatch this special from my childhood and ask the question, does Scary Godmother still hold up? The first hurdle to answering this question was finding somewhere to watch it, but I couldn't find it on any American streaming services. Which means I was made possible by today's sponsor. Huh? Some guy uploaded it to YouTube? Well, it's not like it's in high quality, right? It's in 4K? Well, I guess it's made possible thanks to this guy. From the first frame of the movie, you can tell that Scary Godmother is going for a unique aesthetic. This is because the movie is based off of a children's book of the same name that was illustrated using watercolors. The animators tried to emulate the look and feel of watercolor backgrounds in 3D, which is why it looks like that. The movie starts with Jimmy and his friends meeting up at a cemetery so they can go trick-or-treating on a spooky Halloween night. The only problem is that Jimmy was forced into bringing his little cousin Hannah along with him. Jimmy, who isn't a fan of his cousin, conspires with his friends to lock her in an abandoned house. Instead of a crackhead threatening to stab her, Hannah is met by a witch and a ghost that kidnap her and bring her to a different world. Don't accept magic broom rides from strangers, kids. The only monsters you'll find are the ones that live in the real world, like child predators or politicians. On the fright side, Hannah meets a colorful cast of characters, including Mr. Scully Pettibone, a skeleton in the closet, Harry, a werewolf with an eating disorder, Count Max, Nosferatu with bad jokes, Ruby, his wife who looks like Nadia from What We Do in the Shadows, Orson, the emo kid who wants to one day murder his father and usurp his role as the Vampire King, and Bugaboo, a monster that refrains from eating children because he's a capitalist.
If I went around eating all the clients, I'd be out of work.
And that sums up a good 30 minutes of the movie. There are a few jokes that don't exactly land and exactly one that did.
So other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how did you enjoy the show?
Hannah and all the monsters have a big dance party after Nosferatu roofies the Wolfman, and we cut back to the human world where Jimmy and his friends start to worry about the fact they've locked an 8-year-old in a potential crack den. Cut back to the monsters, and Harry is hungry, so he orders 12 pizzas and sticks Scary Godmother with the tab. Scary Godmother, Pettibone, and Hannah mug Bugaboo to pay for the pizza and leave Harry hungry because he's the member of the friend group that nobody likes but they can't get rid of because he started the group chat. It turns out that Bugaboo is actually the monster that scares Jimmy at night, which is revealed after Hannah tells everyone about Jimmy being the world's biggest piece of shit. All the monsters work together to traumatize a group of 12-year-olds, and Hannah becomes the hero of the group, but not before Scary Godmother gives her a magic key to open a portal to hell whenever she feels like it. And everyone lived scarily ever after. If you're like me, that feels wrong. That's because it is. Scary Godmother Halloween Spooktacular is only half of what I'm here to talk about today. You see, when I was a kid, I always assumed that Scary Godmother and its sequel, Scary Godmother Revenge of Jimmy, were just one really long, poorly paced movie with a weird time skip in the middle. After all, both of them did air back to back over 3 half-hour slots, and I was too stupid to hit the guide button as a kid. Do kids nowadays even have the guide button? Do people still watch TV outside of streaming services? Instead of immediately going over Revenge of Jimmy, I'm gonna take a moment and tell you about some of the things I found during research that I couldn't quite figure out where to fit in otherwise in this video. If the voice for Mr. Pettibone or Count Max sounds familiar, that's because they're both done by Scott McNeil. If you don't know who Scott McNeil is, he was the voice of Piccolo in the Ocean dub of DBZ, and the voice of Wolverine in X-Men Evolutions. Scott McNeil was also the voice of Hack in Reboot, the series that Canadian-based animation company Mainframe Entertainment created prior to Scary Godmother. Reboot is a series that still has a cult following to this day, and if Mainframe had their way, Scary Godmother would be in the same boat. Although Scary Godmother only ever produced 2 TV movies, plans for a full-fledged series targeted at kids 8 to 11 have been discussed all the way up to 2020. These plans, of course, never came to fruition, especially after the failure of the Reboot the Guardian Code. Scary Godmother Revenge of Jimmy actually replaced some of the voice actors from the first movie. Most notably, Alex Doduk, the voice of Jimmy, was replaced by Alexander Ludwig. Revenge of Jimmy came out in 2005, and in the years following, Ludwig would go on to be featured in The Seeker, Race to Witch Mountain, and some little-known franchise called The Hunger Games. But there's only one way to know if this change was good or bad.
Well, 'cause I got a lot of
Right off the bat, you can really tell they improved the lighting and rendering and nothing else. The animation still has a very stiff quality that comes from underpaying and rushing your animators to produce an entire 45-minute TV special in less than 3 months. The animation was done using the same techniques used to animate the first movie, that is, animate a selection of movement cycles and then place them in where necessary. The film opens up with the reveal that everyone on the Fright side is under the constant surveillance of Scary Godmother's oppressive fascist regime. Harry is still undergoing forced labor to pay off his $200 debt from the first movie, Halloween 1 year ago. Scary Godmother is busy preparing all the fall decorations necessary for her upcoming Halloween party and takes Harry off of surveillance duty. Meanwhile, in the human world, Jimmy has developed severe PTSD from the trauma of actual monsters threatening his life last Halloween. He sleeps with the lights on, has booby traps set up, and has thrown out all of the clothes in his closet and removed the door to prevent monsters from hiding in it. Jimmy's friends see how Jimmy's life has gone into disrepair and ask if he wants to go around doing Halloween activities with them and Hannah. Jimmy refuses on the grounds of his trauma-based hatred of Halloween. At the same time, Hannah gets a visit from Bugaboo and decides to visit Scary Godmother using the magic key from the end of the first movie to ask her for help with Halloween decorations. Jimmy, who hates Halloween, gets the idea to destroy it after seeing his friends enjoying seasonal activities. To do this, Jimmy commits several felonies, including breaking and entering, burglary, destruction of property, and criminal vandalism, starting with kicking in the walls of every pumpkin in the local pumpkin patch. Keep in mind, these aren't carved pumpkins that have been sitting out on the sidewalk for several weeks rotting away. These are fresh, on-the-stem pumpkins that he seriously injures his ankle trying to break. The lack of carvable pumpkins makes the kids lament the doom of Halloween, which causes the Fright side to start disappearing. The entire existence of the Fright side is dependent on these 4 kids having a good Halloween. Everything going wrong is averted when Hannah suggests they just carve around the gaping holes in the pumpkin flesh, and everything goes back to normal. Next stop on Jimmy's vandalism tour is to break into every store in the city that sells candy and costumes and vandalize all of it. He marks the candy as poison and the costumes as flammable with a red Sharpie and causes thousands of dollars in property damage. At this point, his body and face also begin to physically deform in frankly horrifying ways. Without candy or costumes, the kids once again lament the end of Halloween and the Fright side disappears again, until the kids realize, oh yeah, we can just do what we did last year and make our own costumes, and decide to have a Halloween party in the crack den from the first movie instead of trick-or-treating. There's also a brief how to make a snack segment that shows up. There was one in the first movie too, but it was just putting peanut butter on a cracker, so I didn't mention it. This time the snack is a groundbreaking invention, a microwave s'more. Jimmy's final crime is to TP the crack den. This one doesn't even affect the Fright side because the kids immediately think it makes a cool Halloween decoration. Hannah sneaks the kids into the Fright side with her magic key, and everyone attends Scary Godmother's party wearing the same costumes from the last movie to save money and time. Everyone has a big dance party and Mr. Pettibone is dressed as a gay cowboy. Orson doesn't want to join the party because of a subplot where Nadja and Count Orlok want him to dress up in royal garb and he just wants to wear a costume. Pettibone gives him parts of his cowboy costume and the subplot is resolved. It's time to announce the winner of the costume contest, but uh-oh, Jimmy snuck in and stole the prize during the dance party. Jimmy's about to sneak out when his PTSD demon Bugaboo arrives late to the party. Jimmy and Bugaboo both scare the living daylights out of each other. Jimmy realizes that the creature that's been haunting his dreams for over a year is actually a nice guy and wins the costume contest. Everyone enjoys candy and friendship and lives happily ever after. Except for Harry, who gets thrown out of the building and is never seen again. Well, except for the outro he does where he asks everyone for food. Now that we've taken a look at both the animated TV films and the Scary Godmother franchise, it's time to ask, do they still hold up? The answer is that it doesn't. For adults. The animation is stiff and the characters don't blend well with their environment. The humor isn't even immature and just isn't funny. The art style is scarier than actual horror movies, but the movie isn't exactly made for adults. I know that children's media can and should be held to a certain standard, but by standards for children's media, this isn't bad. Sure, you can probably find a billion better pieces of animation for young children, but how many of them will really capture the Halloween spirit present in Scary Godmother? Was it a waste of my time to spend an hour and a half of my life watching Scary Godmother as an adult? Yes. Do I regret it? Yes. Does it still hold a special place in my childhood memories? Yes. Whether or not you agree with me, let me know your opinions on the Scary Godmother franchise in the comments below. I'd really love to see what other people think of this movie that frankly I forgot about for a long time after it stopped airing. I hope you enjoyed the video. This is kind of a test run for a longer video I want to make using the same format. I'd really appreciate it if you also checked out some of the other videos on my channel, like this video on D&D's Best Cuddler.